Hello and welcome. This is Shauna with Live the Season Life, and I'm very excited to have you here today. Thank you for joining. Please do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Also, be sure to like this video and share it with others. Now, there of course is a comments field that I want you to Hello and thank you for being here. My name is Shauna with Live the Season Life, and I'm excited to have you here to make muffins with me. So before we get started, I do want to ask that you subscribe, also that you like, and by all means, hit those comments, okay? So what we're going to do today is make what I call my Simply Muffins. They were inspired by my mother. She gave them to me, the recipe, in this lovely cookbook that she hand wrote for me many, many years ago. So this is definitely a family heirloom. And the reason I call them Simply Muffins is because you can make them into anything that you want. You can make banana muffins, you can make apple muffins, you can make zucchini muffins, you can make whatever your heart desires. Today we happen to be making zucchini muffins, so I want you to follow along the journey with me. So the first thing that I'm going to do, and I'm also going to let you know that the recipe will be in the details of this video, so be sure to check the details if you want to see the details and the particulars behind all the ingredients that we're using today. I will use some substitutions, but I'll be sure to note those as we go along, okay? Great. So one of the first things that we're going to do, we need, of course, flour and sugar and all the traditional things you need for muffins. But before we even get into those items, I want to prepare some things that are going to be added into the recipe as we go along. The first has to do with, let's start here first. Pineapple. This recipe uses an 8-ounce can of crushed pineapple. This is crushed with 100% pineapple juice. You want to make sure that it's crushed and you want to make sure that it's in pineapple juice and not anything else. And what we need to do is make sure we drain this. And the best thing to do is to drain this at the beginning of your work with these muffins so that by the time you're ready to add them into the batter, they're fully drained. So I'm going to pop this guy open. And I just have a mesh strainer here over a large cup, and I'm going to dump the entire contents of the pineapples into the strainer. I'm going to give it a quick, just a little tap tap to encourage it to drain. You want to do this because if you don't, it will take your muffins forever to bake. In fact, they may not ever actually make it to done. So you want to make sure that you drain your crushed pineapple before you begin. Okay? This will have plenty of time to drain while we're making the other components of the recipe. And what do you do with the pineapple juice? Whatever you like. You can drink it, you can put it in a smoothie, whatever you like to do. So we're going to set that to the side while we get on to our next item, number 2, which has to do with eggs. This recipe calls for 3 large eggs, but if you're like me, you cherish your eggs because they are expensive. So one of the workarounds that I have for eggs is to use a flaxseed egg substitute. If you're vegan or interested in a vegan lifestyle, you're probably already aware of this. But essentially what you do is you mix ground flaxseed. It has to be ground. It cannot be whole flax seeds. Ground flaxseed meal with 3 tablespoons of water. So 1 to 3. And you have to do this first because it needs a few minutes to set up so it forms that egg-like consistency. So because I need 3 eggs, that means I need 3 tablespoons of flaxseed meal. 1, 2, and magic number 3. So to my 3 tablespoons of flaxseed meal, I'm going to add 9 tablespoons of water. So pardon me while I step out of frame for just a moment here for this portion. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All done. So for 1 egg, it's 1 tablespoon of ground flaxseed to 3 tablespoons of water. Because we have 3 eggs for this recipe, we're using 3 tablespoons of flaxseed meal with 9 tablespoons of water. So we're going to just take this mixture and we're going to just mix it a little bit to make sure that all that flaxseed meal is incorporated. And we're going to set it to the side. And over time, this will go from being quite so liquidy to much more of an egg-like consistency. So perfect if you're vegan or considering a vegan lifestyle, or if you're just on a budget and you're interested in saving on those eggs. So those 2 things are now out of the way. What we're going to do at this point is get into the basics of what we think about when we are making muffins. You know, the flours, the sugars, and so on. Let's put this to the side. So for this recipe, get my large canister of flour here. There are two ways that you can do this. I prefer to sift it. You don't have to, but sifting I find creates a better consistency of your finished product, and it makes it easier to stir in the long run. So I just have this mesh strainer over my bowl, and I'm basically going to put all of my dry ingredients into this mesh strainer, and it's going to sift it for me as it goes into my mixing bowl. So I have 1, 2, 3 tablespoons of, this is all-purpose flour. Sorry, 3 cups, not tablespoons. 3 tablespoons of flour will not make a muffin. You need 3 cups of flour. We'll leave that there. We'll put this over to the side. You also need 2 cups of sugar. You can certainly use all white sugar if you like. I like to experiment and make it a little bit interesting. I tend to use 1 cup of white sugar, 1 cup of brown sugar. Now, if you're watching your sugar intake, you can certainly reduce the amount of sugar that you add to this recipe, so that way you're not adding in quite so much of what you don't like or don't need in your body. So add 1 cup of white sugar, and by default, because of the consistency of sugar, it technically doesn't need sifting, but for me it just helps to kind of put all the dry ingredients in one spot as I'm starting. And in fact, on that note of not using quite as much, I'm not going to do a whole full second cup of brown sugar. I'm just going to do 1 3/4, which again, the recipe is down in the description box. So please check down there for all the details and specs. And the details are probably going to say 2 cups of sugar. So, use your judgment on whether or not you want to actually use that much or take it down a notch or 2. Moving on with our dry ingredients, we're also going to add in baking soda, not baking powder, baking soda. We need 1 full teaspoon of baking soda. And we need 3/4 teaspoon of salt. So we are going to add those items in, and we're nearly finished with our dry ingredients. Get my 1/4 teaspoon here, and we're going to add in 3/4 teaspoon of salt. Not quite enough. That's that. Perfect. So we're now going to get into some of our, what I like to call from the aromatic side of seasonings. I have some canela here, some cinnamon. I like a lot of cinnamon in my muffins, but I'm going to spare you and use only what the recipe calls for, which is 1 solid teaspoon of cinnamon. There's just something about the taste and the smell of cinnamon that just sort of really just warms the heart. So in my opinion, you can't add too much cinnamon. Well, you probably can. You don't want it too spicy, but nevertheless, add what you like. Also, we're going to add in 1/2 teaspoon of ground nutmeg. And we're nearly there. In fact, we're all the way there. And that concludes all the dry ingredients. So fairly simple here. And all I'm going to do now is just sift all this together. And if you don't have a mesh strainer or you don't have a sifter, not a problem. You could certainly pop this into the bowl and just take a fork or a whisk. The idea is to really make sure that all those dry ingredients are fully incorporated into the bowl as you're working. And in fact, just to speed this up just a wee bit, I'm going to use my whisk along with this mesh strainer to kind of get the job done a little bit faster. My mother made these muffins, I don't know, it felt like every other week as a child. We ate them all the time. And what's interesting is that this is a recipe that she took and adapted and made it her own, and I've made some changes of my own to make it my own. But her thing about these muffins was that she needed a way for us to eat our vegetables. And what better way for us to eat our vegetables and eat zucchini than to put it in the form of a muffin, right? Who will not want to eat an actual muffin? So I'm just about done getting all these dry ingredients sifted down in here. Just a few more clumps left to get this done. Pardon the metal on metal here. But like I said, you can do a lot with this recipe. I'm making zucchini muffins today. You can certainly use carrots, you can use pears, you can use apples, you can use whatever fruit or vegetable that's in season that is reasonable for a muffin. All right, so we're just about done here. I think it's some of those tougher parts of brown sugar that, there we go. Got it. Excellent. So we're done with the sifter, so I'm going to pop it into the sink here. And as you can see, we have our beautiful dry ingredients ready to go. All right, so next up, we're going to get into some of our wet ingredients. The first of which is oil. So my mother used only canola oil or vegetable oil in the muffins. It makes it nice and just beautifully moist. It creates a wonderful muffin. However, I completely understand that oil does not agree with everyone, and it's also not on the list for everyone in terms of their health goals. So a few options that you can use. Again, canola oil, which is what my mother used. I happen to use olive oil. My mom used to think that I was nuts for doing this, but I preferred olive oil. I always had olive oil on hand. I never had canola oil or vegetable oil on hand. So this is what I used, and it turns out perfectly fine. Another option that you can use, if you're trying to get rid of all the oil altogether, you can absolutely use applesauce. And don't ask me how I know, but this is 1/4 cup of applesauce. You can certainly use applesauce as a substitute for oil in the recipe. The texture won't be exactly the same, but it will still be absolutely delicious. And to be honest, your kids will never know the difference. So it's your choice. You can either use applesauce, 1 cup of applesauce, 1 cup of oil of choice, or you can sort of mix and match to your preference. So since I have canola oil here, in honor of my mother, I will use canola oil for today. But like I said, I normally use olive oil for this just because that's what I tend to have on hand. If I can get this bad boy open, oh, there it goes. All I'm going to do is add in 1 full cup of oil, like so, easy peasy. Put this to the side. And actually, I should say, and I should have mentioned this, I apologize, at the very beginning of this, you should have your oven preset to 350 degrees for this recipe. Also, in making these muffins, you should have a muffin tin of choice. Make sure that you go ahead and spray it with some nonstick spray so that the muffins don't actually stick in the tin. So preheat your oven at 350 and go ahead and oil that pan. Set that to the side. You'll need it, of course, for later as you're loading up those muffins. So let's continue on here. So we have our oil. We also need a good 2 teaspoons of vanilla flavor, vanilla extract, whatever you have on hand. So we're going to pour that in there, and there's nothing like the smell of vanilla. If you don't use vanilla, you will definitely taste the difference, and it will not be a good difference in taste. Let me just put it that way. And then you're going to add in, remember that pineapple that we started with? Well, I let it sit for a while, as you can see, and it's as drained as I need it to be. I can take my spoon if I like, and I have maybe about 1/4 to 1/3 of a cup of pineapple juice from the can here. Like I said, you can take that, you can drink it in a smoothie, you can make a mimosa with it, you can drink it straight if you like pineapple juice. Whatever you like to do, it's still absolutely perfect to be used. So I'm going to use my spoon here and just make sure I have as much of that pineapple juice out as possible. If you're really into this, you can definitely squeeze it with a cheesecloth or paper towels, but it's not quite that serious. We just want to make sure that as much of that pineapple juice is out so that it doesn't take forever for our muffins to bake. That works. So we have our drained pineapple. Again, this is crushed pineapple. And get this whisk out of the way because I don't actually need a whisk for this, for the rest of this recipe. And then remember that flaxseed meal that we put together earlier? This is our egg substitute. So at this point, if you're using regular eggs, you would put in 3 large eggs, whole eggs, the egg yolk and the egg white, into the batter. We're not using eggs for this recipe. I wanted to demonstrate the flaxseed meal because that may be a little bit more complex if you've never used flaxseed meal before as an egg substitute. So I wanted to show you how it looks when you're going through this process. So again, I did 3 tablespoons of flaxseed meal, and you can see that how the consistency has changed. 3 tablespoons of flaxseed meal to 9 tablespoons of water, because again, 1 tablespoon of flaxseed plus 3 tablespoons of water equals 1 egg. So at this point, we're just going to stir this together nice and gently to make sure all of our wet ingredients and our dry ingredients are incorporated. And you know, guys, we are almost at the end of this recipe. At this point, this is where you start to get into some of your add-ins, and that's where the recipe becomes even more fun. Now, the muffin mixture is going to feel a little bit dry. Don't panic. Everything is fine. Just continue to stir until you notice that all the flour has been incorporated, all those dry ingredients are incorporated. And this is one of the reasons that I like using a glass bowl when I'm cooking, because I can always cheat and look at the bottom and see if I've missed any spots where flour hasn't incorporated entirely. You want to make sure that you're just all mixed in. You don't want to overmix it because then you have a tough muffin, and nobody likes tough muffins. And also another thing, you see I'm not using a hand mixer, I'm just using a spatula, and just like that, it's come together. You know, this is a really great recipe to do with your kids, and it's one of those things I've mentioned before that these muffins practically got me through my first 2 years of parenthood, because I would take some time. It takes maybe 15 minutes to put this whole thing together and pop it in the oven. And what I would do is bake the muffins, and I would pop them in a freezer bag and pop them in the freezer so that anytime I needed a quick breakfast, excuse me, I could just go in the freezer and grab a muffin, and I was good. They're also toddler friendly, excuse me. So a great recipe to have around. So I have fresh zucchini here. I've already washed it. I've just chopped off the ends, and I'm just going to cut this into large hunks because I'm going to put them into a food processor. You don't want them to be so processed that they're mushy, but you definitely do want there to be enough texture to that zucchini to where you can see the bits of green and you can appreciate the fact that there's zucchini in the muffin. So I have this wonderful food processor here. This is my favorite. I love this thing. It's a Ninja. I'll put a link in the description box for this particular model, but it's one of those food processors, pardon the noise here. It's one of those food processors that's just, it just gets the job done in the best kind of way. So I'm going to take these chunks, and they're roughly even. I'll cut them down just a little bit more because I want to make sure that the pieces of zucchini can process at about the same rate, meaning that I don't end up having little pieces process and the big pieces are left, and then you have, you know, zucchini mush and then chunks of zucchini. I don't want that. So what I'm going to do is, this is one whole zucchini, about maybe a medium to large size zucchini. Gets a little overstuffed. And I'm going to process this down. A little bit more. Okay, that's perfect. And as you can see, I have a whole chunk here that didn't get processed. But the rest of this is a really good consistency, and my oven is preheated. I can show you the consistency here. It's not too small of bits and pieces, but then again, it's also not so large that people would, you know, kind of have a fit to the sight of zucchini or green things in their muffins. So in terms of the zucchini, I'm going to add about 2 cups, which should be just this one whole zucchini because this is a nice hefty size zucchini. So this is about 1 cup. Ooh, sorry. This is about 1 cup of zucchini. And by the time I finish processing all these other little pieces, I think that'll do it for the zucchini muffins. So we'll process this. Yep. Mission accomplished. This little guy, it gets the job done. It plays no games. It is on a mission, and it is all for it. So I'm going to pop this zucchini into the bowl here. And zucchini is a great vegetable because it adds a lot of water and a lot of fiber into the diet, so you really can't go wrong with it. And it has a mild enough flavor to where nobody really notices the flavor of zucchini, right? Now, my mother, like I said, was using this recipe as a way to get vegetables into her kids. It's debatable whether the sugar and the flour and all that kind of cancels out the nutrients from the vegetables. I will let you be the judge of that for your own diet and your own family's needs, but it definitely tasted good going down, I'll tell you that much. All right, so we have our zucchini here. We're going to gently fold it into our muffin mix until everything is incorporated. And like I said, you can do whatever you want with these muffins. If you're using banana, 2 cups of mashed banana. If you're using apples, 2 cups of processed apples. If you're using, and when I say processed, I mean a whole apple that you've chopped up, similarly to how I've done the zucchini here. If you're using pears, 2 cups of pears. You can certainly add nuts into these muffins too. If you wanted to add walnuts or pecans, that would be delicious in here. But we're just going to take this and make sure all this is nicely incorporated. And it's going to feel like a lot of zucchini, but trust me, when you have the cinnamon and the nutmeg, certainly the pineapple, which adds a very nice dimension of sweetness to this, you will never notice. You'll just say, oh, I feel like I'm healthy eating my vegetables. It just happens to be wrapped in a lovely breakfast time dessert called a muffin. So that is it. The muffin mixture is completely done. At this point, what you would do is take your muffin tin that you have sprayed your cooking oil in so that the muffins don't stick, fill it to about 3/4 of the way, and then put it into a 350-degree preheated oven for about 20 to 25 minutes, or until a toothpick inserted in the center of the muffin comes out clean. At that point, take this out and of course let it cool. And because I am prepared, I can show you an example of what this actually looks like in real time. Now, these muffins, I'm preparing for an event that I am hosting on Saturday, and so I made this in a different configuration. Obviously, this is not muffin shaped. Obviously, this is not a muffin tin, but what I've done here is to create these sort of muffin squares, if you will. And what happened here is, and that's because I'm giving out samples, 2 different flavors. So this happens to be banana muffins, so I did the same exact recipe that we saw, but instead of using 2 cups of zucchini, I used 2 cups of mashed banana. And I'm going to cut out here little squares, here we go, of banana muffin. And I just want you to be able to see kind of the texture and the consistency of this muffin. And it is, I made these yesterday. They are still moist. They are still delicious. Imagine if they were warm, they would just melt in your mouth with a cup of coffee. I mean, or with your cup of pineapple juice, however you prefer to eat your muffins. But these really turn out to be a wonderful crowd pleaser. They also turn out to be a wonderful, just quick grab and go, because if you are a parent, you know those mornings can be rough. So anything that you can do to make it a little bit easier, the better. My motto is cook breakfast before you need it, cook dinner before you need it, put it in a freezer bag, and it's ready to go. So you're not stressing and struggling during the times that you're hangry, the kid's hangry, everybody's crying, it's just a mess. So in any case, like I said, the full recipe for this muffin, for the Simply Muffins, will be in the description box below. But I do hope that this has been helpful for you. Do me a favor, if you will. If you could just hit that subscribe button, and also if you could share this with someone who you think might enjoy these muffins, I would really appreciate it. And comment down below. Try this recipe and let me know what you think. Or do you think you'll try the recipe? Answer that question for me. Is this a recipe that you would do? And if so, what add-in would you use? Would you use apples? Would you use zucchini? Would you use carrots? Would you use something else? Let me know what you're interested in trying, and I will look forward to replying to you. Okay? Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you soon. Take care. Live seasoned. You will not believe what just happened.
What?
I just did a whole video in one take. Did not press record.
Baby.
Oh, Lord.
So you're gonna do it again?
Yep. I don't have a choice.
I'm going to go to bed. I'm absolutely done.
I'm sorry, honey.
This day needs to be over. This week needs to be over. I don't think I can do anything else.
Child, I don't know.
Well, I'm gonna assume. If. Leave me alone.
I appreciate your grace that I don't have breakfast for you for the morning. I will try to whip something up for you quickly before I go to bed, but you can see what I'm doing.
Okay. I don't think I'm gonna eat this, but I didn't take the oat milk in.
I probably
Oh,
ate
wait
it.
a minute. Look, I didn't eat that.
You better not.
Yeah, I do this all the time.
Let me feel it. Baby.
This is oat milk. I do it all the time.
It
I
does.
did the other day.
Oh my gosh.
All the time.
And you wonder why we have GERD.
Okay. This is what's getting busier and busier because I'm like going through my days and not eating my breakfast because I just get started so early and just it's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
No.
Oh, sorry. I put
just
some water in there.
No, don't do that.
Okay. I'm going to bed. I will see you later.
I guess. Cannot believe I did that, bro.
And baby, don't run out of battery either. So when you charge,
Well, just stop. I'll deal with it. Because the battery was going low. Actually,
you're recording right now.
no, I'm not.
Yes, you are.
I must have pressed record just now. Okay. No, you're not. You're perfect. If you